Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Trevor Fennell, and I act as secretary for SAEMA, which is Specialized Access Engineering and Maintainers Association. We are a very niche, in a very niche market. We provide suspended access equipment for both the temporary and permanent market. When our members supply machinery onto permanent installations, as you can see from the photographs there, they can be quite substantial, and we're slightly different to most of the membership of the AIF, that a lot of our influence is on the maintenance of some of the equipment that our members put in. And this particular package was produced to be a reminder for people like facilities management who have a big machine on the roof, and they really need to understand what they have to do to make sure that the equipment is kept within the law, maintained, certified, insurance inspected, etc. So the talk that I'm going to give is really based around permanent equipment, although SAEMA members do provide on many occasions temporary suspended access equipment, which goes on to a job site during the construction phase, but then is removed once the job is finished. So the SAEMA position, as you can see, we're saying here that the Access Association guidance on using permanent suspended access equipment is within BS 6037, and in actual fact, some of members of SAEMA sit on the BS committee that writes this standard, and BS 5974, which covers the temporary cradles, and we actually sat on the European committee on suspended access equipment for BSI. Regulations and standards. The workplace regulations obviously do apply to all our members. They have to provide equipment which meets these regulations. Management of health and safety at work approved code of practice, provision and use of equipment regulations, lifting equipment and lifting operation, LOLA, which a lot of you people will no doubt be very familiar with. 6037, as I mentioned earlier, is for the design and installation of permanently installed cradle systems. HSG 150, the health and safety in construction. HSG 33, health and safety in roof work. The work at height regulations 205. And we become very, very involved with SAFED, with their guidance, SAFED being the organization of which engineers from the insurance companies are members of, and they work very closely with our members' installation and maintenance teams. So that hopefully will help to show you where we are. Now, so key personnel, the duty holder is defined in 6037, and it's a designated person with management responsibility for safe use, maintenance and thorough examination of suspended access equipment. So if you are in a management facility company or you're in charge of a building, it is your responsibility to make sure, as the duty holder, that this equipment is kept within the regulations, i.e. of LOLA and PURE, examination, certification, record keeping, etc., etc. The definition in LOLA 1988 is the requirements imposed by these regulations on an employer in respect of lifting equipment shall apply in relation to lifting equipment provided used by employees at his work. Now, that tells you why the whole ethos of this presentation is to remind the duty holder that he has to make sure that whoever's working on that equipment, on that particular project, are suitably trained, suitably au fait with that equipment, so they will work safely. It's not a case of you're looking after the building, you get Fred Blogg's window cleaner, give him the job, rub your hands and say, well, that's me free. As a duty holder, it isn't. You've got to make sure Fred Bloggs knows what he's talking about. You have to know that Fred Bloggs turns up with the right PPE to do the job. You have to make sure that Fred Bloggs knows that particular piece of equipment. So it's not just a case of employing Fred Bloggs and saying, thanks very much, everything's okay. As a duty holder, you must make sure that things are in place for Fred Bloggs. That's your duty towards him. His duty towards you is to clean the windows and make sure the external facade of your building is kept in pristine condition. Duty holder, again, any reference in paragraph 3b to a person having control is a reference to a person having control in connection with carrying out on by him of trade, business or other undertakings, whether for profit or not. Again, this particular program is delivered by SAEMA as a reminder to facilities management personnel, just to make sure they understand what they really should be doing to make sure that they keep within the requirements of the rules and regulations. So a duty holder under regulations include employers, that's the guy who employs the window cleaners. Self-employed people become the duty holder. Building owners become duty holders, and managers and employees become duty holders. Regulations placed on responsibility of the duty holders to avoid working at height where possible. You've heard that at several of the presentations done. That's a fundamental of working at height. Don't work at height if you don't need to. To use working equipment or other measures to prevent falls where working at height it cannot be avoided. Again, that's straight out of the rules and regulations. A duty holder, you're not being asked to do anything different to what the law says you must do. To use work equipment or other measures to minimize the distance and consequences of a fall if it should occur and where the risk of falling cannot be eliminated. Again, that's straight out of the law. You're not being asked as a duty holder to do anything special. Regulations require duty holders to ensure that no work is done at height unless it can be done other than at height. That's been covered before. We've just mentioned that. Make sure the work's planned. If you're the duty holder, make sure that it's planned when Fred Bloggs is going to clean the windows. He just doesn't turn up at 8 o'clock one morning and says, "I've come to clean your windows, Gov." You should know when he's going to be there, and you should have been able to come to an agreement that he knows what he has to do as part of his regime. Emergency rescue plans, they should be in place, and they should be available for anyone who attends that site to be able to ask, what's your emergency rescue plans if this guy should happen to get stuck in a cradle or something like that? They should be available, and it's up to you as the duty holder to make sure they are easily available to people, the requisite people like the site manager, available for inspection by the service people, fire brigade, police. It shouldn't be, well, how do we get him down? I haven't a clue, Gov. You've got to be able to go and get hold of the emergency and rescue plans, which should be written down and kept within the confines of that building. Risk assessment. Part of the job file that you should have should contain a risk assessment, so that when the window cleaner comes and he's deciding how much it's going to cost to clean the windows, he can have a look at the risk assessment and understand fully what you're wanting from him and what he has to provide. You can then see what the risks are, and then he may have some other ideas, additional ideas to control those risks. Work is postponed if weather conditions endanger health and safety. It's no good pretending that, if you're in the middle of a force 9 gale, the window cleaner can turn up and go and clean your windows. He can't. There is a limit to what a man should be asked to work in. And a lot of it comes down to the actual speed of the wind and how comfortable the man feels. Because I'm sure you'll appreciate, on any building, normally 4 sides, you can almost find a quiet side where the wind isn't affecting. So it may be quite okay for the guy to go clean, say, the north face, because the wind's attacking the south face, but you don't want him to go on the east or west or south because it could move the cradle around too much. But the north face, he doesn't even know he's in the wind. So that has to be planned and has to be understood, and that information has to be passed on to the relevant person on the site. If a window cleaner, Fred Bloggs, turns up and it's very windy and he knows it's very calm on the north face, he should be able to tell the guy, I won't be working anywhere else other than north face today. I can clean that safely, clean it well, and I know I'm in no danger. Suspended access equipment is often overlooked as an essential part of building services. A well-designed and maintained system is a cost-effective asset to the building it serves, and the duty holder is legally responsible for ensuring that the suspended access equipment is safe and fit for purpose, properly maintained and examined, and used by adequate, competent, trained operatives. So this goes a little bit back to what I was saying originally. If you're the duty holder, you can't suddenly employ Fred Bloggs' window cleaner. He comes in, gives you a nice price, and you then just say, oh, well, he knows what he's doing, and forget about it. You can't. It's your duty to make sure that man understands the equipment, what he has to do, and make sure he understands any risks that could be involved in it himself or his operatives performing the duties you need him as the duty holder to perform. Ignoring the documents leaves the duty holder in peril of prosecution under health and safety legislation. A lot of duty holders don't really understand that where the buck will stop should there be an incident on a building that he is responsible for. Fred Bloggs goes along to clean the windows. He's not got the information he needs. He's not being checked to make sure that he understands what he's doing. He's not signed in. That guy has an incident. There's an incident which results in injury. The duty holder will be one of the first people in line that the HSE will go talk to, because he should have made sure on that day that man knew what he was doing, and he had some way of being able to prove that he was trained and competent to use the equipment that had been provided for him by the duty holder. Communications, either by voice or intercom or radio, it's very, very important that the guy doesn't go out on a 20-story building cleaning the windows and has no contact with anybody in the building, a workmate or anything. There must be a means of communication. And in a well-written risk analysis and his working program, it should be clearly stated what should be available when he's going to work on that building. This day and age, we all have mobile phones, and a lot of people think, well, he'll take his mobile phone. There are areas where a mobile phone is absolutely no good to you. You need a dedicated two-way radio control, because mobile phone, if you're very high, sometimes in a town, sometimes the signal isn't there. And also the requirement to be able to communicate is very, very strong. So you can't rely on him taking his own mobile, no one knowing what that mobile number is, etc. So we have to, again, you know, the duty holder must make sure all this is in place. Wind carries away sound of voices. Rain might damage sensitive equipment. All this has to be considered. The duty holder must make sure that the equipment he has means of communication that can handle windy conditions and can handle rainy conditions, wet conditions. Personal protective equipment must also always be worn by the window cleaner or the facade operative. And again, it's up to the duty holder to make sure that it's provided either by agreement with the contractor, he provides his own, or B, the duty holder provides equipment, but he has to make sure it's worn. And he has to make sure that they don't turn up saying, oh yes, I've got my safety harness, chief, and then go out and he starts cleaning the windows without a safety harness. It's the duty holder's responsibility to make sure the rules are in place and there are people on that building to make sure the rules are being followed. Environmental conditions, especially in large towns, you can get funneling of winds. When the wind's in a certain direction, it comes between existing buildings onto the building that's being worked and can be at totally different force and speed to what you can find down at ground level. So that is something that the operative has to be comfortable with, understand, and be able to go to a duty holder's representative and say, it's very windy up there. I consider that it's too windy to operate. I'm not going to be cleaning the windows today. So the duty holder must put in place measures to allow that situation to be dealt with. That's the presentation for duty holders. As I say, this particular program was developed by SAEMA simply because a lot of our members found that when they had maintenance contracts to maintain this equipment, for some reason the building owners or duty holders seemed to think it was the SAEMA members' responsibility to make sure all this thing was in place. It isn't. It's the duty holders' responsibility, and that's why we as an organisation provided this presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If not, have a good day. Thank you very much.